Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video and the final update of the year. So, all that being said, let's jump into it. If you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. I was eating a pastry. I thought I had some pastry stuff on my finger. But don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoy, of course. And again, nothing I say is financial advice. Do your own research and make your own decisions. So Tesla, once again, outperforming the market, up 1.12%, closing the day at just over $123, which is a nice thing to see. The market, not super red, but, slightly red today, right? Only 0.606 rather on the QQQ and 0.26 on the SPY. So tech in general seemingly outperforming today. But overall, a pretty boring day. Nothing too crazy happened overall, right? Pretty sideways day for the most part. But the main thing to look at for Tesla is essentially more or less what we talked about yesterday. The good thing is the fact that on the 1 hour, we did actually technically break out of this downward channel. As you can see, I don't have it perfectly drawn, but now you can see based on these candles right here that there definitely was a channel to break out of. Something like this you can make an argument for, right? So as we broke out of with this massive candle, we came back down, tested it several times, couldn't truly break below it, started getting the pressure back up, which is exactly what you want to see. This is pretty much, pretty textbook. And then we ended up pushing up into close. And unfortunately, we didn't really close at a, it's weird. It's bullish because we did break out and we did retest it, as you can see. And so far it looks like it's good. But again, things can fall apart pretty fast. And unfortunately, we didn't actually break above that, 123-ish level and hold above it, most importantly, like I said yesterday's video, that 123, 124 level. Not only do you want to break above it like we did here, we actually want to close above it, right? And we actually closed pretty much right at the overall level. As you can see, this blue line that we've bounced off several times and then we've bounced below several times. So we're pretty much right at that pivot point at the moment. So overall, I do think it's looking better for the bulls and the bears. But we are still at a pretty, crucial pivot point to see if we can get another leg up, I guess potentially even next week. Don't forget, Monday is, I believe, as far as I'm aware, the market is closed once again, essentially for New Year's. So keep that in mind, of course. But overall, Tesla with a decent performance today. There's really not a whole lot to talk about today. So I'm going to make this video probably a little bit shorter than usual, guys, mainly because, again, everything I said yesterday is still completely intact other than the fact that we did, in theory, seemingly break out of this potential downward, channel, potentially inverted head and shoulders. We broke out of it. You can argue the fact that we also broke out of this potential bear pennant, right? Essentially, we broke out of this little mini downtrend we were in. But again, this is more of a mini downtrend. This isn't the ultimate downtrend that I want to see a break out of. The ultimate downtrend will be the yellow line right here, right? That'll be probably, well, not this, even this isn't technically the ultimate downtrend. This is like the medium downtrend, and the ultimate, the true downtrend will be essentially these red lines, right? That is like the true downtrend. You can make the argument for it. Will we break out of that? I definitely think we will. Will it happen, this year? Very hard to say, man. I don't think so. Maybe towards like the very end of the year, maybe. But like I'll be surprised if it happens like the first half. Let's just say that, right? I'll be like genuinely extremely shocked if it happens in the first half of the year. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in the very moment, ladies and gentlemen. Overall, again, when I talked about where this can potentially go, my ultimate target, ideally, not ideally, but I do want to see somewhere around 150. That is my like main price target. Ideally, I would love to see somewhere in the 160s. But around 150 would be something that I would be pretty disappointed if we don't at least see, which from this moment of today's closure would be another 20% increase, which is actually quite a lot. But Tesla, that's something. I mean, sometimes Tesla can do that in one day. Okay, maybe not one day, but like 2 days, let's say, right? Yesterday we had like an 8 or 9% day. That's essentially almost half of that already, right? So just something to consider in terms of just overall the movement Tesla can do. It can rise just as fast as it can fall. Just keep that in mind. We've seen that time and time again. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it will drop whenever it's been rocketing, and vice versa. Whenever it's just dropping off a cliff, it doesn't feel like it's going to actually rocket back up. And that's usually just how it feels, and that's usually how the market gets you, right? So all in all, again, the main thing to keep in mind is the fact that you want to play this level by level. A little bit of a lower volume today, still ultimately a pretty high volume day relative to all these volume days back here, but relative to the past few days we've had, this is a slightly lower volume day, which kind of makes sense being the last trading day of the year. A lot of people are probably already calling it quits, already just celebrating, having fun, just kind of chilling, which rightfully so. I think after this kind of year, people probably deserve it. So all of all of that being said, yeah, that's essentially what I am currently seeing as of right now, ladies and gentlemen. So overall, just waiting for this breakout to truly play out. Really want to see 123 to 124 breakout. That will be pretty good to see. And then we'll see where that actually overall takes us. And again, my main price target is going to be the overall resistance sitting around 150, ideally. Like, well, not ideally, but like, I'll be pretty disappointed if we don't get there within the first half of January. Let's just say that. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm seeing. So let me know down below. Happy New Year. Hope 2023 ends up being better. I'll be honest. I'll be completely honest. I don't think it will be that much better. I do think 2023, at least the first half, might actually be pretty not so good. But you know, you never know. You never know. The market can surprise you. You never really know with this market sometimes, right? So you never know. But you know, I wouldn't be surprised if this, at least the first half of 2023, can be potentially, you know, painful. Let's just say that. We'll see, guys. We'll see. So all that being said, thanks for watching. Happy New Year's, and I'll see you guys on Monday, or rather Tuesday. Oh yeah, actually, I guess to fill off the rest of the video. So in terms of TA, I will say end right there. But people did say that they want to hear my opinion on the other EVs. So for the rest of this video, for the next 2 minutes or so, I'll quickly explain that. So in case you're not aware, I personally drive a Model 3 Performance. I've been driving it for, how long has it been now? I think about just over 2 years, I think now. I have the 2020. Yeah, so just over 2 years, I think I've been driving it now. I got it like last June, in 2019, I think is when I got it, or 2020. Can't remember. Time just flies nowadays, man. Time just completely flies. Anyways, the point is I'm driving a Model 3 for a few years now. Let's just say that. And I absolutely love the car. Now, I did test drive other EVs, right? I've test driven, obviously, the other Teslas, of course, right? I've just recently test drove the refresh Model X, which is phenomenal. I'm planning to test drive the refresh Model S probably next week. And the Lucid, I'm planning to test drive probably next week. I've test driven just the other day the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is their EV, which is a pretty popular EV. I see people buying that thing. It looks pretty all right. And I also test drove the Ford Mach-E, and I still plan on test driving the Volkswagen. I forgot the name of it already, but the Volkswagen's EV. So in terms of the, let's start with the Mach-E. That was the first one I test drove. That wasn't really a Tesla. You know, it was okay. It wasn't bad, but similar to what I saw in the Hyundai, it's kind of like you get into the car, and it doesn't feel like the future. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It really depends on what you're looking for, I guess, right? But like when you get into Tesla, it feels different. Like it feels like, wow, this is not just a car, right? At least that's what I think. That's what most people think, I would assume, at least. But when you get into those cars, it doesn't feel like the future, right? So the best example is a Tesla is a computer that happens to have wheels, while you know the Ford Mach-E, the Hyundai Ioniq, etc., and probably the Volkswagen, honestly, are essentially just cars that happen to run on battery. You know what I mean? That's kind of the way I see it personally, because the interior and everything are very not that techy, not that futuristic-y. You know, it's pretty much a regular gas car with just potentially maybe a slightly bigger screen or something like that, or a slightly longer screen, and that's pretty much as far as it goes, other than the fact that of course it runs on, you know, it uses batteries, not, you know, gas and whatnot. So, or like an engine. So that's kind of the main difference there. In terms of driving the Ioniq, for instance, right? And even the Ford actually drove, you know, they both drive fairly decently. The Ford was actually decently fast, honestly. It wasn't, you know, it was respectably fast, I would say. Nowhere near as fast as the Tesla, but respectably fast. The Ford also has a really, like, essentially has the old Model S and X screen, but it somehow feels even worse than those. And those were already old for the Model S and X, right? The new, obviously, refreshed Model S and X screen is phenomenal. I sat in that, by the way. Made my Model 3 screen look old. That's how crazy, amazing it was. But the Ford Mach-E, and then also has that knob at the bottom center, which just feels so out of place. Like imagine designing UI for that car with a knob there, right? That just sounds like a nightmare. And it just feels so strange to me. It just feels like they're trying to mix like old and new together so that people that are just transitioning from gas cars to EVs don't really have to get hit with like a massive sudden change, which I mean, I understand, don't get me wrong. I think that's fine. But the knob just feels really weird to me. I personally don't like it, but that's just me. That's just my opinion. And ultimately, the car itself, this doesn't feel techy, right? It doesn't feel like a computer on wheels. It just feels like, you know, a gas car that happens to run on batteries and not gas. You know what I mean? That's the easiest way. That's the most, like, you know, simplistic way I can potentially put it. For the Ioniq, I actually was, you know, the Ioniq was nice. I actually like the Ioniq overall. I like the design. I think the exterior design is pretty nice actually. I do think it's a pretty aesthetic design, has a futuristic vibe to it on the outside. Inside, unfortunately, it really doesn't. Inside is the same issue as the Mach-E. It just doesn't feel futuristic at all. It doesn't feel new or, the next thing essentially, like the way the iPhone felt compared to like those flip phones, right? It doesn't feel like that difference. It just feels like if the flip phone happened to flip up and then that tiny screen on top of the flip phone happened to be somewhat touch screen. And that's essentially how it feels to me, as opposed to the iPhone when it came out. It was like the whole thing, it's like it's a smartphone, it's faster, it works better, it just makes more sense, it has more things in it. And the whole thing is touchscreen. It just felt like the next step. These don't feel like the next step. These feel like maybe 1 foot out the door, but the other foot's still kind of, in the previous room, if you will. But the drive on the Ioniq felt great. The drive, it felt smooth. It felt, surprisingly actually quite good. I'll be completely honest. It felt like a nice drive, very chill, very cool, very smooth. However, the acceleration was laughable. Like the acceleration for an EV, considering it's an EV, those in theory should be better than gas cars in general, like, on an average. Horrible acceleration. The regenerative braking was extremely weird. Didn't really understand it. It was like the levels that it would do the regenerative braking in terms of like how intense it would be would just constantly alternate based on the speed you were going or something. It just felt very strange. It wasn't consistent, I guess, is my point. Like the Tesla is. Maybe I'm just biased, maybe because I'm just so used to the Tesla, but it didn't feel consistent. It felt very awkward to get used to for me. And I'm someone that drives with 1 foot only, right? Because that's how Teslas usually drive, right? You don't really need to press the brakes very often at all. So that felt very weird to me. And then the tech itself was just, the screen was okay and everything, but like it's not something that I personally like. The way Tesla, at least what I view, is that they look at the future like as if FSD is going to become a thing, like guaranteed. So that those screens are essentially computer screens. Like you can watch YouTube, you can have all these apps as if it's like literally a massive phone on your car essentially, or a computer, right? And you can like watch things, you can play things, you can do all these different things, and the screen makes sense for that resolution and for what its purpose is, and potentially even further will be if FSD and all that stuff becomes actually prevalent, right? However, the Mach-E, the Ioniq, even the Lucid, even the Mercedes to some extent, the EQS, right? Their screens, it's like they don't take that into consideration. Like they don't seem like screens where you can watch a movie on or Netflix or play a game on. Like they just don't seem. Not only are the screens good for that, or like even capable of doing something like that, because the design of the screen just doesn't make sense for that, like at all. It's like way too small or whatever. Or like the Ford one has like that massive knob. Like how are you gonna watch things when there's like a little massive knob just right staring at you, right? It's like a massive mole. But they're also probably just nowhere near fast enough, right? So that's kind of the way I see it, right? It's like they designed these without that thought in mind whatsoever. And if FSD becomes like an actual thing, which I obviously think it will be, in the next several years, they have to retrofit like every single car essentially, like fully. Like it's not even just like maybe swap out a chip to make it faster. Like the whole thing has to be retrofitted because it's quite literally not designed for that purpose in mind, right? Which is another thing I consider as well. But ultimately, like again, the easiest way and the most like basic way I can explain it is when you sit in a Tesla and you drive a Tesla, it feels like the next step. It feels like that transition from flip phones to iPhones. But when you sit into like one of the OEMs, like the legacy OEMs, EVs, which again, they're not bad. I'm not saying they're horrible. Like how dare you even consider buying them? Like they're not bad, honestly. They're not bad cars, but they don't feel like it's the next step to me, at least, right? They don't feel like I'm sitting in and driving the next step in potentially like cars, AI, tech, whatever, like the iPhone did compared to the flip phone. It just feels like a flip phone that just happens to have that screen at the top now being slightly touchscreen, and that's kind of the transition it feels like to me. But that's just my opinion. Again, just my thoughts. Could be wrong. You don't have to agree. You don't have to disagree. It doesn't matter. That's just what I think. That's what I feel. Could be a little bit biased, hard to say for sure. I'm trying not to be, but even my girlfriend agrees that she just thinks a Tesla, there's no reason to buy those cars that are priced at essentially the same price as like the Model Y, give or take like a couple $1,000, let's say, when the Model Y exists. That's just pretty much better in almost every single aspect you can possibly want, including, of course, the main thing being the supercharging network that Tesla has, which is just, I can't even imagine going on a road trip on a non-Tesla and having to use like the non-Tesla superchargers. Like I don't even understand how you would do that. That just sounds scary, seriously. Anyway, that's what I think about that as well. So I thought I would, add that into the end of the video. People seem like they want to hear my thoughts on that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think overall. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great new year, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Peace.